Today was the day I crossed a line I never imagined I would. Since I started feeling attracted to him, I tried to push those thoughts away, as if that would be enough to make them disappear. But they didn't go away. In fact, they grew stronger with every casual encounter, every exchanged glance, every subtle provocation I tried to ignore. My husband's younger brother always provoked me in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just his appearance, although I could never deny that he was ridiculously attractive. There was something in the way he moved, in the way his eyes watched me from afar, always with that air of someone who knew the effect he had. It was almost impossible to ignore him when we were in the same room. I knew it was dangerous, that I shouldn't encourage it, but the more I tried to resist, the more it seemed inevitable. Today, the inevitable happened. It was an ordinary afternoon, with nothing to announce what was about to come. My husband had gone out to take care of some things, and I stayed home, alone. At least, that's what I thought until I heard the door open and saw him enter. He didn't say anything, just threw me a look that made my heart race instantly. The air around us seemed different, heavier, and I felt a shiver run through my body. I knew I should pull away, but I couldn't. When he passed me in the hallway, I felt that familiar scent that seemed to follow me lately. My body reacted before I could stop it, as if every cell in me was waiting for that moment. I had worn a tight dress in the morning without thinking too much, but now it seemed more revealing than I had intended, as if it were screaming how much I wanted to be noticed by him. He approached slowly, and the silence between us only made everything more intense. I could feel his gaze moving over my body, analyzing every detail, and it made me completely vulnerable. I tried to maintain my composure, but the truth was that I was trembling inside, consumed by a mixture of desire and guilt that grew with each passing second. When he touched my waist, it was like an electric shock ran through my body. It was a light touch, almost innocent, but it made my heart race in a way I couldn't control. I should have pulled back right then, but instead I stood there, motionless, waiting for what would come next. I felt his breath near my face, warm and rapid like mine. He didn't need to say anything, and I knew we were about to cross the line. The silence around us only intensified the tension building between us. Everything seemed to conspire for that moment to happen. When he slid his hands down my waist and pulled me closer, I had no strength to resist. Proximity made my body react automatically, as if it already knew exactly what it wanted. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to regain control, but desire had already consumed me. I felt his fingers touch the bare skin of my back, where the dress left a space exposed, and a shiver ran through my entire body. My mind was torn between pleasure and guilt. With every second next to him, I sank deeper into that forbidden desire, but at the same time, I couldn't help myself. His touch was different, bolder, more provocative, and I could feel that he knew exactly the impact he was having on me. When he tilted his head and brushed his lips against my neck, my breath faltered. I closed my eyes tightly, trying to stifle the moan that threatened to escape, but it was useless. The heat of his touch, combined with his scent, left me completely defenseless. Every movement seemed calculated, every caress a provocation that made me lose control even more. He slowly guided me into a room next door, where the dim light created the perfect atmosphere for what we were about to do. He locked the door behind us, and in that instant, the outside world ceased to exist. There was nothing but the two of us, trapped in that game of desire and tension that had been dragging on for so long. I was pressed against the wall, my heart racing wildly in my chest as he came closer. His body subtly pressed against mine, but intensely enough to leave me breathless. I felt his hands slowly slide up my thighs, rising along the fabric of my dress, provoking a shiver that left me on the verge of delirium. It was wrong. I knew that. But at that moment, right and wrong seemed irrelevant. All I wanted was to surrender to that feeling, to the desire that consumed me completely. He knew exactly how to touch me, how to awaken in me a pleasure I hadn't even remembered was possible to feel. When he slid his lips onto mine, the kiss was intense, filled with repressed passion that finally found a way to set itself free. Our mouths met urgently, as if we were trying to make up for all the time we had spent resisting this desire. The heat of our bodies mixed, and I felt every curve of mine mold perfectly to his body. His hands never stopped exploring me, sliding down my back, thighs, and waist while the kiss grew more and more voracious. I couldn't think of anything else, only the sensation of his touches, his kisses, and how much I wanted that moment to last forever. I completely lost track of time. I don't know how long we stayed there, trapped in that game of seduction and pleasure. Every touch from him seemed to ignite a different part of my body, leading me into a state of ecstasy I had never experienced before. The feeling of the forbidden, of risk, only made everything more exciting. Finally, when we pulled apart, my lips were still numb from the intense kisses, and my breath was still uneven. I felt completely surrendered, vulnerable, and at the same time filled with a pleasure I couldn't describe. I left that room with trembling legs, my heart still racing, and my mind flooded with a mixture of emotions I didn't quite know how to process. Part of me felt guilty for what had just happened, but another part, a stronger part, couldn't help but wish that it would happen again. I knew that was only the beginning. After I left that room, the weight of what had just happened began to settle in me. Every step I took seemed harder, as if the very floor was trying to remind me of the gravity of my mistake. Still, part of me felt alive, more than I had felt in a long time. It was as if the forbidden desire had awakened something I didn't even know was dormant. I went straight to the bedroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My lips were swollen from the intense kisses, my face flushed, and the dress a little wrinkled. I touched my neck, still warm from his lips, and sighed deeply, trying to compose myself. The reflection in the mirror showed a woman different from the one I used to be. There was something new in my eyes, something I couldn't explain, but I knew it was dangerous. Deep down, I wondered how I let things get to this point. I loved my husband, or at least I thought I did. So why couldn't I resist? Why did his brother's touch affect me so much? Guilt started to grow inside me, but at the same time it was drowned out by the desire to relive that moment. I tried to distract myself with anything that could occupy my mind. I tidied up the house, turned on the TV, but nothing seemed enough to erase the memory of the sensation of his touches, his kisses, the warmth of his body against mine. My skin still burned, as if his mark was engraved in me, and that only increased my restlessness. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When my husband came home, I forced a smile and tried to act naturally, but the feeling that I was carrying a forbidden secret was almost suffocating. He kissed me lightly, and I felt like an imposter. I couldn't help but compare that soft touch to the intensity of the kisses I had received earlier. And that only made me more confused. During dinner, his brother showed up. My whole body reacted when I saw him walk in, as if it were an automatic response. I tried not to look at him, but I knew he was watching me. I felt the weight of his gaze on me, and that only increased the tension that seemed to fill the room. The air around us felt heavy, charged with something only the two of us could feel. He sat at the table, and with every movement, I felt my skin tingle. It was as if simply being in his presence put me on alert. He kept the conversation casual, as if nothing had happened, but I knew that behind that restrained smile there was something more. And with every furtive glance, the memory of what we had done earlier became even more intense. I wanted to get up, leave, escape that situation, but I was trapped, both physically and emotionally. I couldn't pull away, I couldn't stop desiring. When dinner was over, I hurried away from the table and went straight to the bedroom. I closed the door and took a deep breath, trying to control the avalanche of emotions that flooded me. But before I could calm down, I heard footsteps approaching. My heart raced instantly. For a moment, I thought it was my husband, but when the door opened slightly, I saw his face. His brother. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him, and I felt the air leave my lungs. Tension in the room was almost palpable. He didn't say anything, just approached slowly, and I stood there, motionless, unable to resist the magnetism he exerted over me. Before I could think of saying anything, he was close enough for me to feel the heat of his body. His hand touched my face gently, and I closed my eyes, letting myself be carried away once again by the desire taking over me. His touch was soft, but at the same time firm, as if he knew exactly the effect he was having. Kiss came right after, and this time there was no hesitation. I surrendered completely, allowing desire to speak louder than reason. His hands slid over my body with an intimacy that left me breathless as our bodies moved in perfect sync. With every touch, every caress, I felt the guilt being replaced by pleasure. We kissed with a hunger that seemed impossible to satisfy. Every touch was filled with urgency and desire, as if we were trying to extract as much as we could from each other in that brief moment. My hands roamed over his back, feeling each muscle tense under my touch. The heat between us was almost unbearable, but I didn't want it to stop. I couldn't. He pressed me against the bedroom wall, and at that moment, the whole world around us disappeared. There was no more guilt, only the forbidden pleasure that consumed us. His firm body molded to mine in a way that felt perfectly natural, as if we were made for that fit. Clothes became just another obstacle between us, and when he started to slide his fingers up my dress, I didn't stop him. On the contrary, I let him undress me slowly, savoring every second of that feeling of being desired in such an intense and uncontrollable way. I felt the texture of the fabric being removed from my skin, the cold of the night mixing with the heat he provoked in me. He lifted me with ease, and our mouths never separated for a second. Every kiss was a silent promise of pleasure, a total surrender to something we both knew was wrong but irresistible. My thoughts were confused, but my body knew exactly what it wanted. I desired him more than I should, more than was allowed. And there, in that room, we gave ourselves to desire without barriers. Every touch was bolder, every movement more intense. I could feel his scent mixed with mine, the heat of his breath against my skin. Time seemed to stand still, and all that existed was the pleasure we shared, as if the world had been created just for that moment. When it was finally over, I felt exhausted and at the same time full of energy, as if I had just woken up from a long dream. He looked into my eyes, and in that instant, I knew this wouldn't end there. The desire was still present, latent, and although we knew the risk, it was impossible to ignore it. He left the room in silence, just as he had entered, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stayed there, lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had just happened. Guilt started to settle in again, but at the same time, I knew that if I had the chance, I would do it all over again. The night went on, and I couldn't sleep. I relived every touch, every kiss, every moment of that forbidden time. My mind fought against what my heart and my body had already decided. I cheated on my husband, and I did it with his brother. The thought terrified me, but at the same time, it excited me in a way I couldn't explain. I knew that the forbidden desire had won, and that now there was no going back. That would be our secret, something we would share in silence, in every furtive exchange of glances, in every hidden touch when no one was watching. And even if I wanted to, I couldn't erase what had happened. I cheated on my husband, with his brother. And the worst part is, I know it wasn't the last time. Now that you know the truth, what would you do in her place? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to receive the next intense and captivating stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.